The incident, California. It was a typical sad evening, and as usual, we were having our weekly gathering with close friends. These were people my wife and I had been close to for 2 decades. She had known them a bit longer than I had. Tonight, we were at Scott and Andrea's place. Scott, a fast food franchise owner, ironically avoided fast food himself, being keen on health and fitness. His business venture had paid off well. He spent his days overseeing operations, seeking new business ventures, and managing his investments. Andrea was the friendly face at the local elementary school's front desk, a job she did more for engagement than necessity. They were parents to 2 teenagers, Holly, 15, and Matthew, 13. Bill, who worked as a vice president at a sporting goods company, was an ex-college baseball player. His dreams of going pro were dashed by an injury, but fate led him to his current job, and his wife, Lisa, who worked in accounting at the same company. They had a 14-year-old daughter, Tasha. John, who owned several car dealerships, was doing well for himself. His wife, Marcy, had sadly passed away from cancer a year ago at just 41. They had a daughter, Savannah, 21, who was studying at university. As for me, Dame, I'm a master electrician turned project manager, doing quite well financially. My wife, Gina, dedicates her time to our home and our 18-year-old daughter, Natalie, who recently started university, attending the same one as Savannah. These gatherings have been a cornerstone for our group, keeping us connected over the years. I joined this circle through my wife after they had finished college. We've been fortunate to have all stayed close by and successful. As I looked away from the sunset, I noticed everyone's whereabouts. Gina was chatting with John near the patio, while Scott and Bill handled the grill. Andrea and Lisa were inside, preparing side dishes. I've always cherished these get-togethers. A night with a beloved wife, good food, and lifelong friends is hard to beat. Marcy's absence since last year, however, has left a void in our group, affecting all of us, not just John. John had taken a break from attending these events, the sight of other couples reminding him of his loss. But we made sure he didn't retreat from life. We, the guys, would often coax him into joining us for fishing or golf, while the ladies encouraged him to get out more, even helping with his shopping and cooking. Without this, he might have ended up ironically relying on Scott's fast food for his meals. John and Gina were engaged in quiet conversation, occasionally glancing my way. At the moment, it seemed like nothing unusual, but looking back, I woke up to an unexpectedly delightful sensation. I believe it was pleasant. Gina's gentle touch was stirring me awake, and I gradually came to realize what was happening. Such moments with Gina were rare, maybe a handful of times annually, so I cherished them. It wasn't that she was reserved, she simply had other preferences in our intimacy. Soon after, the moment reached its peak. Gina handled it gracefully, though she wasn't particularly fond of the process, choosing instead to clean up afterwards. Then it was her turn. I've always enjoyed reciprocating, and I indulged in the act as often as she allowed, which, thankfully, was quite frequently. With a combination of my efforts, it didn't take long for her to reach a climax, marked by the pressure of her grip and her expressive response. Following that, I gently positioned myself above her, engaging in a more intimate connection. We both favored this closeness, valuing the eye contact and the depth of our connection. Other positions were part of our repertoire, but they felt less personal. Gina was impressively flexible, a fact that added to our experience. I looked into her green eyes as she gazed back into mine, and we moved together in a steady, harmonious rhythm. She reached another peak, yet I maintained my pace. Eventually, the intensity grew, leading to a synchronized culmination of our shared experience. Post our intimate morning, we took a shower together, a weekend tradition, before dressing for the day. I headed to the garage to work on my car, a cherished hobby, while Gina attended to her tasks around the house. Sundays were my dedicated time for my car project. I casually shrugged, agreeing to a chat as we settled at the kitchen table. Conversations like this were not unusual for us. We always prided ourselves on open communication. Little did I know, this particular talk would turn my world upside down. So, how's the car project going? Pretty good. It's running smoothly now. Just a few interior parts left to find, but I've got enough to keep me busy. And your plans for today? Just the usual, laundry, a bit of gardening, and maybe some dusting. The house is quieter with Natalie gone. So, what's on your mind? Well, you've seen John becoming more sociable lately. We've been encouraging him to think about dating again. He's still young, and we believe Marcy would have wanted him to find happiness. I agree. They were so close, but I'm sure Marcy wouldn't want him to spend his life alone. Right, and he mentioned last night that he's ready to start a new relationship. That's great. He needs to move forward. Anyone special in mind? Gina hesitated slightly, a hint of what was to come. There is someone he's very fond of. He's known her for a while now. Do we know her? This is the tricky part. It's me. What? John's interested in you? Yes, he told me last night. My initial reaction was lighthearted, not grasping the full impact of her words. Well, I can see why. You're attractive and smart. Too bad you're taken. It was then I noticed she couldn't meet my eyes, and a realization dawned on me about her last comment. I get it now. This whole chat is to clue me in that you're, well, considering other options. You're thinking about leaving me for him. That's what you're saying, right? She looked at me, her expression one of surprise. No, Dame, that's not what I want. I want to stay married to you, always. Then what's all this about, Gina? You're clearly hinting at something I'm not going to like, and it obviously involves you and John. Can't you just be straightforward with me? Dame, just take a moment, okay? Let me explain. I reclined in my chair, bracing myself for whatever revelation was coming. I had a hunch that our intimate moment this morning was a setup for this conversation, especially the extra affection. Dame, you know we all except you met back in college. It started with us girls. Andrea met Scott at a party in our second year, and then she introduced Lisa to Bill. And then there's me and John. I met him in an English class. He was a talented writer and I needed help, so he tutored me, and my grades improved. What you didn't know was that we started dating. You and John were an item before he was with Marcy. Why didn't I know about this? I was getting to that. So, John and I were a couple, and things were serious. We even talked marriage. But then one night, we all drank too much. John and Marcy ended up together. I was livid when I found out, but they were apologetic, claiming it was a one-off mistake. I chose to forgive them. But then, Marcy got pregnant with Savannah. Gina's eyes welled up as she told the story. I felt a mix of sympathy and anger that I'd been kept in the dark. She went on. John decided to marry Marcy, the right thing to do, he said. It broke me, but I got it. We stayed friends, though things were strained at first. Then I met you. We fell in love, and eventually, John and Marcy did too. We kept my past with John from you, fearing it would affect your friendship. We thought we'd all be happy together forever, dying of old age one by one. Naive, but that's how close we were. So, if Marcy hadn't fallen ill, this would have all stayed buried, and I'd still be none the wiser, right? Dame, don't be so hard on yourself. You're not foolish. What happened in the past is over and done with. Marcy and he found their happiness, and I found mine with you. Does that mean you're not content with me anymore? Not at all, darling. I'm more content with you now than ever before. I love you, and I hope our time together this morning made that clear. So, was this morning a part of some scheme to prepare me for whatever you're trying to say? That's clever. No, darling. It was just my way of showing you how much I love you, nothing more. All right, so you and John were together, then you both ended up with others. What does it have to do with us now? If you're not seeking a divorce, then what's this about? Gina rose from the table and walked to the kitchen window, gazing out over the yard we had lovingly cared for since we moved into this house a decade ago. I was utterly baffled about where this conversation was heading. Was she hinting at something unconventional, or if not that, then what? Gina, delaying won't make this easier. Can you just tell me what you're thinking? Okay, Dame. I've been pondering, wondering how you would feel about, well, me spending time with him. I was instantly furious. I stood up so quickly that my chair fell back, skidding across the floor and crashing into the cabinet. Gina recoiled at the noise. Spend time with him? Are you talking about starting something with him? No, Dame, it's not exactly that. Please, calm down. You're frightening me. You know what, Gina? I can't stay calm right now. I need some space to think. We can talk about this later. I just need to get away for a bit. I snatched my keys and headed to the garage. With the Malibu out of commission, I ended up in my truck. I turned up the radio and sped away from the house. Her words were cryptic, not a divorce, not an affair, but still involving him. One thing was clear to me, sharing, in any form, wasn't an option. She was either completely mine, or not mine at all. It seemed we were about to find out which it would be. Unintentionally, I found myself driving by John's apartment building and noticed his Mercedes out front. He had shifted to this apartment after Marcy passed away. Their old house was just too full of her memories and felt overwhelmingly empty, especially with Marcy gone and Savannah off to college. I might have made a similar move in his place. The irritation I had towards Gina for even thinking about suggesting such a thing was equally strong towards John for his role in it. But then it dawned on me I didn't have all the facts. Perhaps it was Gina's brainchild and she was seeking my approval before bringing it up with him. I definitely needed more clarity on this. Update: she did what? The shock in my 18-year-old daughter, Natalie's voice was palpable over the phone. She asked me to accept an unthinkable arrangement with Uncle John, and when I refused, she chose him over me. I explained again. That's unbelievable, Natalie exclaimed. Natalie, please, that's still your mother, I cautioned her. I don't care who she is supposed to be. The mom I know wouldn't betray you like that, not after over 20 years of love and commitment. It's just unthinkable. Listen, I understand you're upset with her, and you have every right to be. But remember, she's the same person who cared for you all these years. She loves you, even though she made this decision. That's no excuse. You were good to her, Dad. She had everything she needed with us. How could she betray us like this? I'm so angry with her right now. I feel the same, Natalie. But in the end, why would I want to stay with someone who prefers someone else? You have a point, but it feels like she's been living a lie for 20 years, wasting your life. I thought so too at first, but then I realized I have you, and that makes everything worthwhile. I get that, but still, I've always felt a bit like an outsider with them, as I never shared their college experiences. It's a small thing, but when they reminisce about those days, I just can't join in. I'm not thrilled about it, but I'll just have to make the best of the situation. I'm sure you will, Dad. If you need anything, just tell me. My friends and I are here for you. We can even go out for dinner together if it helps you feel better. We both chuckled, and I felt a sense of relief. It was comforting to know I wasn't the only one who found the situation a bit off. The following day, while I was having lunch, my phone rang. I thought it was Gina calling, but it was Scott's name on the caller ID. Interesting. Dame, how's everything? Well, that depends on what you've heard. We know the whole story. John and Gina filled us in last night. Then you probably have an idea of how I'm feeling. What's going on? Firstly, we want to say we're sorry about everything that's happening, and we had no idea. Gina mentioned you were upset that we kept her past with John a secret. We didn't mean any harm by it. We thought it was for the best not to tell you. Looking back, we might have handled it differently, but back then we thought what you didn't know wouldn't affect you. I understand, Scott. I was a bit upset initially, but I might have done the same in your position. I don't hold it against you. Andrea, Bill, and Lisa will be relieved to hear that. Also, we were thinking, since you and Gina were supposed to host our gathering this week, it might be awkward, so we're shifting it to Bill and Lisa's place. That's okay. I won't be attending anyway, so it doesn't really matter to me where it's held. We thought it might be too soon for you, but we didn't want you to feel excluded. Just let us know when you're ready. Sorry, Scott, maybe I wasn't clear. I'm not planning on coming back. Ever. Listen, I know this is tough, but we're your friends. We won't let you go through this alone. We were there for John when he needed us, and we'll be there for you too. I appreciate your understanding, Scott, and I have no hard feelings towards the rest of you. However, I can't be around those two after what they did. They broke my trust, and I can't see myself interacting with them socially again. I know you all are in an awkward position, and it's better if I step back. It's not right to make you choose sides. This tension goes back to our college days, and since I'm the one who joined your group last, it makes sense for me to be the one to leave. I'm at a loss for words, friend. I get where you're coming from, and you were never an outsider to us. You might have joined us later, but you were always part of the group. Thanks for saying that. But the thought of casually talking to them as if nothing ever happened is impossible for me. I don't hold any grudge against the rest of you, but I do against them. I can't predict my reaction in their presence. If there's a chance to hang out without them around, I might consider that. And what about Natalie? She's bound to get married, have children. You'll have to interact with them eventually, right? That's in the future. Hopefully, by then, I'll be able to at least be around them. If not, I'll have to find a way to manage. After hanging up, I realized my life had revolved around Gina and our shared friends. I hadn't made much effort to form friendships outside of that circle. At work, I had colleagues, but we didn't socialize much beyond the office. It was time for a change. I moved into an apartment and kept my old car in storage, which was a bit inconvenient. Trying to build a social life was harder than I thought. My job didn't lend itself to making friends easily, as I was a supervisor and our work days ended early. The guys usually went home first before going out, which ruled out after-work gatherings. Eventually, I decided to go out alone. I wasn't seeking a romantic relationship, just some new friends to spend time with. I visited a few familiar spots Gina and I used to go to, hoping to find comfort and maybe some acquaintances. But I realized I wasn't as outgoing as I needed to be, and Gina's actions had left me doubting myself. The turning point occurred about half a year after my divorce was finalized. John and Gina had settled my share for the house and refinanced it under their names. It bothered me that they were living there. The thought of John in my old home didn't sit well with me. I had wanted to sell it and have them find another place, but Gina was particularly fond of the house, so I grudgingly agreed to their buyout. I found myself at one of our favorite spots, trying to enjoy myself. Eager to step out of my usual routine, I had offered drinks to some women and enjoyed a few dances. It was lighthearted fun, nothing more. Then, Gina and John walked in, and suddenly the atmosphere changed for me. Gina looked stunning, as always, and a sense of heaviness settled in me. I was frustrated that she still had such an impact on my emotions. It was hard seeing them happy while I was still finding my way. Since the final divorce hearing, I hadn't seen or spoken to her, except for necessary discussions about the divorce and messages regarding our daughter, Natalie. Not wanting to engage, I retreated to a quieter area of the club, hoping to leave unnoticed. But luck wasn't on my side. They took a seat near the entrance. So, I waited in a corner, watching for a chance to slip out. They ordered drinks, and soon John excused himself, maybe heading to the restroom. He scanned the club and glanced my way, but I doubted he saw me. However, I couldn't move while Gina was still there. When John returned, he whispered something to Gina, and they both looked in my direction. Before I knew it, Gina was navigating through the crowd towards me. I tried to move further back, but found myself at a dead end. She approached me confidently. "Why are you avoiding me, dame?" she asked. "I don't want to talk." I thought that was clear, I replied. "I just wanted to say hi and see how you're doing. We were married for over 2 decades. Aren't we friends at least?" she inquired. No, Gina, we're not. We're former partners connected only by our child. That's the extent of it. If you had simply fallen out of love with me, seeking your own path, perhaps things could have been different. At least then, I could have understood a shift in feelings. But the way you handled things, claiming to still care for me while trying to convince me to accept such an unusual arrangement, and then choosing a friend of mine over me, it's clear we can only be individuals who were once married. Besides, why does it matter to you? You've got the life you wanted, the person you chose, and you still have your friends. For you, it's as though I vanished, just like Marcy. That's not fair. Despite what you think, Dame, I do care about you. I have feelings for you. I'd even be willing to balance my time, though I know that's impossible for you. You're important to me, Dame, and it pains me to see us like this. Do you think there's a chance we could be friends someday? Is there a chance for everything to rewind, for you never to have left me for John? That's your answer. For over 20 years, I gave you all my love, and it became meaningless to you the moment John came into the picture. Now, please excuse me, I need to leave this place. With that, I hurried out of the building, masking my true emotions. John attempted to speak, but my stern look made him reconsider. Deep down, I still cared for her, but friendship was out of the question. It seemed we weren't friends anymore, not just with her but with our mutual friends too. They hadn't reached out to me, hadn't replied to my messages or emails. Maybe it was too awkward for them, or maybe I was only part of the circle when I was with Gina. Now that we had parted ways, I felt like an outsider. That evening, I came to a profound realization. Staying in this familiar area was impeding my progress. Each location I frequented was a choice based on comfort and pleasant memories shared with Gina. I had hoped to build upon these memories, but instead, they were anchoring me in the past. It was time to make a decisive change and embark on a new chapter alone. This didn't mean relocating to a different state. I still wanted to remain accessible to Natalie at the university. However, I could achieve this while settling in a new part of town, away from Gina and John. I initiated my search for a new home in an area where I had previously worked and enjoyed. It was a comfortable 30-minute distance from my old neighborhood, now inhabited by Gina and John, providing a suitable separation. Conveniently, the university was still within a 90-minute reach, striking the perfect balance of proximity and distance. After exploring several options, I discovered a house that resonated with me. It was modestly sized compared to my previous 4-bedroom house, reminiscent of the first home Gina and I had rented together. This new place had 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, including a master bath. The sizable backyard sparked the idea of adding a pool. I designated one of the rooms as a guest bedroom for Natalie's visits or other guests, while the third room was transformed into an office with a small fold-out sofa, just in case I had more than one guest. The house was situated in a quaint cul-de-sac within an established, well-maintained neighborhood. My research indicated that the homeowners association was more relaxed compared to others, which appealed to me. So, I put in an offer and successfully closed the deal about 45 days later. The neighborhood was so peaceful, and I was a bit worried that my arrival might disrupt its tranquility. Nevertheless, I had to move in. As a gesture of goodwill, I distributed packages of muffins to each house on my street, accompanied by a note introducing myself and apologizing in advance for any inconvenience caused by the move. After the divorce, I thought I'd be tackling the moving process alone, minus the friends I'd lost in the proceedings. But, surprisingly, as soon as the moving truck arrived, several of my new neighbors came out to lend a hand. Thankfully, I didn't have much stuff, and by a stroke of luck, my new furniture was delivered at the same time. I ordered a bunch of pizzas, and by the end of the afternoon, not only was everything moved in, but we had also unpacked and organized my belongings. I had a feeling I was going to enjoy living here. That evening, I was invited to my first neighborhood poker game. The rest of the street had been playing together for years, and they were a tight-knit group. They usually played on Wednesdays, but they had set up a special game that night to welcome me, the new guy. The men gathered for cards, while their wives engaged in different activities each week, like playing Scrabble or hosting a book club. I felt a bit out of place, not having a partner to join in with the women, but it was just how things were. "So, what do you do, Dame?" Rick, a notably muscular man, inquired. "I'm currently working as a project manager for an electrical contractor. I'm also licensed in electrical, plumbing, and general contracting," I replied. "Sounds like you're just the person we need around here," Ed chimed in, with the others nodding in agreement. "What do you mean?" I asked, curious about his comment. The house I'd bought had come on the market under unfortunate circumstances. The previous owners, Travis and Rachel, had gone through a divorce. Travis had been unfaithful, and the fallout led to both of them leaving the neighborhood, Rachel moving back to Georgia and Travis relocating elsewhere in town. The community had been surprised by the turn of events, and it seemed they had all sided with Rachel in the matter. The conversation continued, and I could sense a strong community bond among my new neighbors. It was a refreshing change, and I was eager to become a part of it. "Our neighborhood operates on a unique exchange system," Bart explained. "Ed takes care of our investment accounts since he's a financial planner. I work for H&R Block as a regional supervisor, so I manage everyone's tax returns. Rick, who owns a few health clubs and works as a personal trainer, offers us free memberships and fitness advice. And Rob, the general manager at the local arena, occasionally provides us tickets to shows and sports events. We offer our services for free, with the only cost being any additional fees, like filing charges. If you want to join in, maybe you could help with minor home repairs. Nothing major, just simple fixes like a leaky faucet or a faulty switch. Interested? Definitely, I replied. What about the other 2 houses on the street? The Monroes live at the corner, Ed chimed in. They're a lovely older couple. He's a retired Navy man with arthritis. They could use your help the most. We include them in our group mainly for Miss Ruth's exceptional cooking and baking. They host a neighborhood dinner monthly. You might meet their daughter too, nicknamed the Ice Queen. The Ice Queen? What's that about? You'll find out. Just wait and see. The Walkers live in the other house, Rob added. They've been here for about 5 years and keep to themselves. You might get away from them, but that's about it. They're also an older couple. After playing some cards, I posed another question. Is there anything I should know about you guys? Like what? Bart inquired. Just the usual. Any unusual beliefs or music preferences? Nothing out of the ordinary, Rick assured. But we'll keep you updated on any neighborhood events. One of the wives called out from another room, jokingly chiding us. The evening was filled with laughter and a sense of belonging. I had finally found the friends I was searching for. During the following week, I worked hard in the day and settled into my new home at night, making minor adjustments to the kitchen. The previous owners had done a great job with the place. On the next setting, I decided to introduce myself to the Monroes. I approached their door and knocked gently. Soon, the door opened, revealing the couple I assumed to be Mr. and Mrs. Monroe. Yes, the woman asked. Good morning. My name is Dame Weston. I've just moved into the neighborhood, just 2 houses down, and I thought it'd be nice to introduce myself. Oh, please come in. We noticed the moving truck and all the commotion down there. It's so thoughtful of you to drop by. Do make yourself comfortable. We spent a bit of time chatting. Richard had a 30-year career in the Navy, having joined straight after high school. Health issues eventually led to his retirement. They had been married since his early days in the service and were now nearing their 45th anniversary. They became parents in their 32nd, to a daughter named Taylor. They proudly showed me her pictures displayed on the wall. She had long, straight black hair, and I couldn't help but comment on her appearance. She's quite striking. Do you get to see her often? Oh yes, quite frequently. She's a teacher and a volleyball coach at the local high school. She visits us quite a bit, and she's not in a relationship at the moment. Are you, by any chance, unattached, Mr. Weston? I couldn't help but grin at her not-so-subtle attempt to play matchmaker. Yes, I'm currently single. I got divorced about a year ago. She seemed delighted by this news. I then offered my help with any odd jobs they might need as part of the neighborhood's informal exchange of services. They pointed out a few areas around the house needing attention. Inside, things were pretty manageable, but outside, there were more evident signs of wear and tear, like loose siding and some broken bricks. Nothing too challenging, but it would require some time. I started with the leaky faucet in the bathroom. This led to the discovery of a few more issues with the plumbing and the vanity, so I ended up turning off the water supply and taking apart the whole setup. It was during this work that I first met their daughter Taylor. She walked in unexpectedly and seemed surprised to see a stranger fixing the bathroom. Excuse me, who are you? She inquired, her voice tinged with caution. Hi, I'm Dame. I'm just helping out your parents with some repairs. Just make sure to clean up when you're done. And I'll need to see a detailed bill to ensure my parents aren't being overcharged. Her cautious approach was understandable, and I nodded in agreement, focusing back on the task at hand. Her sharp tone left me speechless, and I could only nod in response. As she departed, I refocused on my work, though her nickname, Ice Queen, seemed fitting. Nonetheless, I couldn't help but notice her appearance. She matched the descriptions I'd heard, strikingly beautiful with long, black hair that flowed over her shoulders. Her physique was robust, a style I personally find appealing. Gina, a person I knew, shared a similar build. I overheard her talking to her parents from a distance. Mom, Dad, please consult me before hiring someone for repairs. You might be easily misled. He's disassembled the entire bathroom for a minor leak. Did he explain his plan to you? Don't worry, dear, Miss Ruth reassured her. We didn't hire him. He's our new neighbor, living in the Olsons' former house. He's only asking payment for the materials, but he could still overcharge for those. Don't pay him until I've reviewed everything. He might even cause additional damage just to charge more. Their conversation drifted out of my hearing range. I continued working, and about an hour later, Miss Ruth came to talk to me. I apologize for Taylor's behavior, she said. It's okay, ma'am. She's just being protective of you. Still, she shouldn't have spoken to you like that. She's actually very kind-hearted, but has been this way since her divorce 3 years ago. What happened? I'm not entirely sure, except that her spouse was unfaithful. She never shared the full story with us. I believe she's embarrassed. She was the one who initiated the divorce. By the way, dinner's at 6 p.m. Will you be finished by then? Yes, I should be. "Will your daughter be there?" I was actually considering excuses to avoid dinner if she would be present, but Miss Ruth misunderstood, thinking I was eager to see her daughter again. Sadly, she had to leave. Perhaps another time. The following day, I was invited to Ed and Kathy's for dinner, looking forward to spending time with them in a more intimate setting. Kathy was a wonderfully kind-hearted woman, though her appearance was modest. She had light brown hair and her face bore marks of past challenges, perhaps from her youth, and she was a bit plump. However, what truly stood out was her warm, nurturing personality. It was obvious that she and Ed shared a deep, loving bond. During a conversation, I mentioned my recent work at the Monroes, fixing their bathroom plumbing. "Did you meet their daughter?" Ed asked with a hint of curiosity. "Edward, please don't refer to her that way," Kathy gently chided. "It's not respectful." "Well, she's not exactly pleasant," Ed replied. "Yes, I met her," I said. "She dropped by to visit her parents while I was there." "And what was her demeanor?" Ed inquired, casting a glance towards Kathy. He seemed to anticipate that her actions would justify his opinion of her. "She was quite direct, advising me to tidy up after my work and expressing concern about her parents being taken advantage of," I explained. Ed seemed smug, but Kathy was quick to point out the bigger picture. "I'm not saying she's friendly, but stooping to name-calling doesn't help," Kathy pointed out. "What's her story?" I asked, curious about the family dynamics. It's hard to imagine such pleasant people having a daughter who comes across so harshly. "There must be more to it." Kathy shared what they knew. She was married and living in Florida until about 3 years ago. After her divorce, she moved back here. Maybe she still harbors some hurt from that experience, or perhaps it's just her personality. We've only seen this side of her, not knowing her before. We tried including her in neighborhood events initially, but she never seemed interested," added Ed. "So, eventually, we just stopped inviting her. It's a shame," I reflected. "She's an undeniably beautiful woman. Seeing her picture, I thought she might be different from what you described, but my interaction with her was quite enlightening." The following weekend, Natalie and her roommate, Patris, came over to hang out. Patris had a pleasant look, with shoulder-length, wavy brown hair and a slender build. She was wearing a white denim skirt that complemented her modest and athletic figure. We spent the day at the mall, where I ended up buying a few things for both of them. Natalie mentioned that Patris's family was just getting by, covering her college cost, which meant little room for extras like new clothes. I was in a position to help out, so I thought, why not? We grabbed lunch at the mall's food court and later enjoyed dinner at Olive Garden, which was Patris's choice. Back at my place, we watched a movie on pay-per-view and then got ready for bed. The guest room had a queen-sized bed, which would have been enough for both of them, but Patris chose to sleep on the fold-out bed in my office instead. On Sunday, I treated the girls to brunch, and we spent the rest of the day just chatting. Natalie often nudged me about getting back into dating, suggesting that there were some graduate students and even professors at the university who were single and might be a good match. I appreciated her concern but wasn't keen on the idea of being set up. At the following week's poker night, it became clear that Natalie and Patris's visit hadn't gone unnoticed. "Hey dame," Bart chimed in, "I see you had some guests over the weekend. How's life as a bachelor treating you?" "Bart," I replied with a grin, "I'd appreciate if you didn't refer to my daughter in that way. And her friend is just her college roommate." Bart seemed a bit embarrassed and offered a clumsy apology, which I waved off as no big deal. 2 weeks later, we gathered for the monthly neighborhood dinner at the Monroe residence. Mrs. Ruth really knew how to host, and her dishes were always a hit. It was no surprise that everyone in the neighborhood was keen to participate in these gatherings. Mrs. Ruth had a unique way of arranging seating at these events, often alternating men and women and mixing up the pairings each month. She believed it helped break down any social barriers and maintain a sense of community amongst us. Mr. Monroe sat at the head of the table and Mrs. Ruth at the other end. I found myself seated between Ed's wife, Kathy, and Bart's wife, Jennifer. Jennifer was a tall, slender woman with striking features, often accentuated by her bold makeup choices. Despite her lean frame, her personality and devotion to Bart shone through. It was heartwarming to see the level of commitment in each couple around the table, making me ponder about the history of my own house within this tight-knit community. A part of me felt a twinge of disappointment when I realized Taylor wasn't around. On one hand, it seemed like the other couples didn't really warm up to her, but then again, they hadn't really had the chance to see beyond her tough exterior. They only saw the side of her that was still reeling from her divorce, which had happened 3 years ago. But for me, there was something about Taylor that was just magnetic. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It was as if beneath all that resentment and frustration, there was someone truly remarkable, just waiting to be understood. The phone interrupted my thoughts early in the morning, and I was surprised to hear Miss Ruth's voice on the other end. "Dame, I hope I'm not disturbing you too early, but I needed to catch you before your day started." "Not at all, Miss Ruth. I'm not working today and I was already up. What can I help you with this morning?" "Do you know a bit about cars?" "I do, yes. More about rebuilding them than fixing them, but I've got some knowledge." "Is there a problem with your car?" "Not mine, actually, it's Taylor's. Her car won't start, and she had to borrow mine to get to work." I was wondering if you might be able to take a quick look and see if it's something simple. You have her car keys. Yes, I have her spare set. I'll come over and check it out. Since I had a couple of days off until my next project kicked off, this was as good a time as any to deal with a car issue. As I mentioned to Miss Ruth, I wasn't a car repair expert, but it didn't take long to figure out that the alternator was the problem. I found myself actually looking forward to helping Taylor out. There was a strong pull I felt towards her. Yes, she was attractive, but it went beyond that. There was this palpable energy whenever we were in the same room, and I couldn't help but wonder if she sensed it too. I really wanted to ask her out, but she still seemed somewhat reserved. However, I was eager to get to know her better, and this felt like the perfect chance to make a connection. I spent several hours working on the car, even making a trip to the dealership for an alternator that the auto parts store didn't have. I managed to finish the repairs about an hour before Taylor returned. It was a Sunday, and while the women in the neighborhood were having a girls' night out, we guys decided to do something similar. Our evening started with bowling, followed by dinner, and eventually, we ended up at a club where a well-known local band was playing. The club had a dance floor, but we didn't plan on dancing. It wasn't really our thing, and our partners wouldn't have appreciated it anyway. As the night progressed, the band played impressively, and we casually observed the crowd, particularly some of the women on the dance floor. Then Rick spotted her. "Look, isn't that the Ice Queen over there?" he said, nodding towards a dimly lit booth near the stage. To my surprise, it was Taylor, sitting alone. She looked stunning, and I initially thought she might be waiting for a date, which left me feeling a bit disheartened. "That makes sense, she's a night owl," joked Bart, eliciting laughter from everyone but me. "I didn't think she liked to have fun," Ed added, provoking another round of laughter. "Maybe she's having a Bloody Mary," Rob chimed in, and everyone laughed again. I felt a bit irritated by their comments but kept my feelings to myself. As I watched, a lively blonde woman joined Taylor at her table. I was relieved to see she wasn't on a date but out with a friend. Taylor, who had been looking at her phone, was now engaged in an animated conversation with her friend. Throughout the evening, several guys approached their table, asking them to dance. The blonde quickly accepted, but Taylor politely declined each invitation with a gracious "no thank you." Eventually, the attention shifted to her friend, leaving Taylor in peace. I observed this from a distance, pondering my next move. About an hour and a half into the evening, I had already sipped on quite a few drinks. Just Diet Cola though, alcohol isn't my thing. My attention alternated between the live band and, more frequently, Taylor. She really was strikingly attractive. Her friend had just joined someone on the dance floor, leaving Taylor alone. That's when a rather assertive, and seemingly tipsy, guy approached her. He was insistent on asking her to dance, but Taylor kept declining politely. The man, however, started to get upset and began to confront her rather loudly. I immediately stood up and walked over to them. As I neared, I caught bits of their conversation. "Always on your phone in a club. This place is for dancing," he complained. "I'm just here to hang out with my friend," Taylor replied calmly. He reached for her hand, trying to pull her up, but she resisted. She attempted to free her hand, but his grip was firm. "Come on, you'll enjoy it once you're out there," he persisted. "Really, I'm not interested. Please, just leave me alone," she insisted. That's when I stepped in. "Hey," she said. "No. How about you leave her be?" I suggested. "It's a free country." "I'm not moving," he retorted. I gave Taylor a reassuring wink and smile, and she returned a warm, grateful smile. "You're right, it is," I agreed, then turned to Taylor. "Would you like to dance?" "I would, thank you," Taylor said with relief. She slid out from the other side of the booth, as the guy wouldn't budge. I took her hand and led her to the dance floor, ignoring the stunned expressions of the other patrons. The guy who had been bothering her soon lost interest in his seat too. The music had a moderate tempo, but we danced as if it was a slow tune, maintaining a respectful distance. She placed her hands around my neck, and mine were gently placed around her back. Our eyes met. "You seem to make a habit of coming to my rescue," she noted. "You're worth saving," I replied. I could sense her reaction as I spoke, a subtle shiver, as if my words resonated with her. "Thanks for the kind words. It's funny, isn't it, how it's always you coming to the rescue. Ever wonder why?" I gazed into her eyes once more. "Maybe it's fate," I suggested. As we connected, I realized this was unlike anything I'd felt before, even with Gina, and that was 2 decades ago. This felt surreal, almost magical, and I was fully immersed in it. Our eyes locked, and as I drew her closer, we both leaned in, our lips meeting softly. The gentle touch of our lips felt like it ignited something deep within me, an inner glow of sorts. Holding her closer, I felt her arms wrapped tightly around my neck. I could only imagine the surprise on my friends' faces back at the table, considering their reaction when I first asked Taylor to dance. The kiss, tender and lingering, finally ended, and I noticed her friend's astonished expression in the background. Taylor rested her head on my shoulder as we continued to dance, ignoring the rhythm changes of the songs. Breaking the silence, I asked, "Did you drive here, or did your friend bring you?" "She did. Picked me up from my place." "Why do you ask?" "I was thinking of driving you home," I blurted out, then quickly added to clarify, "I mean, offering you a ride home." I fumbled over my words, trying to convey my intentions clearly while she smiled and chuckled at my nervousness. I'd like that. I'm ready whenever you are. Just need to let Karen know I'm leaving. After informing my friends of my departure, they seemed a bit embarrassed. Dame, Ed chimed in, we're sorry for our earlier comments. We didn't realize there was something special between you two. Everything's fine, guys, no worries. But let's drop the Ice Queen nickname for her from now on, alright. See you all later. As I drove, the truck had a mind of its own, veering into the next lane more than once. The roads were quiet, thankfully. My thoughts, however, were anything but. They kept circling back to Taylor. My feelings for her had caught me by surprise, and it seemed she might feel the same. It's strange, considering we've never really had a proper date until tonight, and even this was only a half-hearted attempt. I arrived home safely, only to find the house felt more hollow than ever, especially since the divorce was finalized. Living alone was never my forte. Before meeting Gina, I had a brief stint of solitude and didn't care for it much. I wasn't the kind of guy to seek fleeting encounters at bars or clubs. I skipped college, diving straight into trade work, following in my dad's footsteps. He passed away in a work accident a decade ago, and after that, my mom moved to Massachusetts with my grandparents. We keep in touch over the phone. With an early start looming, I finished packing for the week and went to bed. I realized I still missed Gina's presence, the comfort of sharing a bed, having someone to talk with in the mornings, and enjoying breakfast together. There's a saying that resonates with me, born married. It means feeling incomplete without a significant other. Until recently, Gina's image would fill my thoughts during my lonelier moments, a natural occurrence given our long history. But tonight, as I lay in bed, it was Taylor's image that filled my mind, wishing she was there beside me. I had forgotten about Nat's visit this weekend, but her presence is always a joy. I did mention to her that I might have plans. Is it with a lady? She teased with a smile. If I do go out, yes, it'll be with a lady. A woman, actually. That's great, Dad. It's high time you started mingling again. A few minutes later, the phone rang. Hello, Dame, it's Taylor. Hey, I was just thinking of calling you. When can we meet up? Actually, that's why I'm calling. Mom was wondering, if you're free, whether you and your daughter would like to join us for dinner tonight. I'll just confirm with the head of the household, I said to Natalie. Hey Nat, how do you feel about dinner at Miss Ruth's tonight? Absolutely, I wouldn't miss a meal from the best chef I know. We'll be there. I was hoping to see you sooner than dinner, though. It'll be a nice opportunity for you to spend time with Natalie. Plus, I have a few errands to run before we meet. I took Natalie out for lunch and then to a movie. It was really just a way to pass the time. I filled her in on the recent events with Taylor, starting with the car incident. So, you spent the whole day fixing her car and even covered the cost of the part, but kept it to yourself. How will she appreciate your effort? It's not important that she knows every detail, Nat. She's aware I fixed it, but I did it because it felt right, not for recognition. I guess it's different from your generation, where everything goes on social media. Some people prefer doing kind acts quietly, not for attention. Like those who donate to charity and then make a big announcement. It makes you wonder if they're doing it for others or for themselves. I get your point, but I still think she should know about your thoughtful gesture. On our way back, I picked up a bottle of wine and some flowers, and we headed home to prepare. You've never dressed up this much for dinner at Grandma Ruth's, she remarked playfully. She was teasing me, knowing full well the reason for my extra effort. I playfully stuck my tongue out at her in response. We left our house at 5:56 p.m. and walked over to Ruth and Richard's. Just as I was about to ring the bell, the door swung open and there was Taylor greeting us. As we entered, Miss Ruth approached. I greeted her with a small kiss on the cheek, handed her the wine, and introduced my daughter to the new significant person in my life. Natalie, Miss Ruth called, could you lend me a hand in the kitchen, please? Of course, Grandma Ruth. Taylor and I remained still until they had disappeared around the corner, then we exchanged glances again. I handed her the bouquet and drew her close, planting a gentle kiss on her lips. You look stunning today, especially with your new hairstyle. I really missed you while I was away. I missed you too, and thanks for the compliment. You're looking sharp yourself. Let's head to the deck, I want to have a chat. I nodded in agreement, and she clasped my hand, guiding me outside. As we left, I caught a glimpse of Natalie and Miss Ruth in the kitchen, both beaming. Their smiles hinted at their approval. We settled into a couple of deck chairs, positioned closely enough to hold hands comfortably. How was your work week? She asked. It went well, eventually. We faced some issues with permits and staffing at the start, but managed to resolve them quickly. It was a hectic project with overtime pay, but 12-hour days still take their toll, no matter the compensation. That sounds exhausting, but I'm happy you're back. She hesitated, as if she was mustering the courage for a particular question. Dame, may I ask you something personal? Taylor, feel free to ask me anything, anytime. I'll always answer as honestly as I can. I hate to bring this up, but I need to know. Why did you get divorced? That's quite a direct question, I said, shifting in my seat. I'll tell you my story if you share yours. Agreed. In short, my wife left me for someone else. Do you know why? I could tell she was trying to understand if I had done anything to push Gina away. Had I been unfaithful, abusive, or something else that might have driven her to leave? I shared the whole story with her, from Gina's college days with John to the finalization of our divorce, and my decision to move and start anew. Do you know how they're doing now? Does she regret her choice? As far as I know, they're fine. I haven't heard much, and I prefer it that way. Natalie respects my wish to stay out of it. I find it hard to believe she would walk away from a stable marriage like that. I mean, if there were issues, I could understand, but from what you told me, everything seemed fine. She never mentioned any discontent to me. That's a pretty lousy way to handle things, but hey, look at the bright side. Without that happening, you wouldn't be here with me right now. You know, I've thought the same thing. All right, your turn. As she shared the story of her marriage then with Jimmy, I was astounded. No surprise she's wary about men and relationships now. He had deeply hurt her. 3 years on, and the pain was still there. I held her hand tenderly, my voice soft. I'm really sorry for what he did, Taylor. We're not all the same. Her gaze met mine, possibly with a glimmer of fondness for me. I could tell she was holding back tears even then. I'm starting to see that, Dame. Thanks to you. Thank you. Our quiet moment was broken by Natalie calling out, Miss Taylor, Dad, dinner's ready. We stood and went inside. It was clear that Taylor and I shared mutual feelings, and Natalie and Miss Ruth seemed supportive. At Miss Ruth's suggestion, we excused ourselves from cleaning up and headed out for a walk, hands intertwined. We wandered the neighborhood, chatting and learning more about each other. As we neared my street, she proposed a different plan. I've never seen your house before. Would you like to? I could show you around. She agreed, and we walked past her parents' house towards mine. Inside, she looked around, taking it all in. I must say, I'm impressed, she eventually remarked. I half expected a bachelor's pad with party decorations and cliché posters, but this is really nice. Her gaze struck me with such intensity, it nearly floored me, and I couldn't help but burst into laughter. I'm just joking, I assured her. You better be, she started, but then her expression softened. What's wrong? I asked. Do you realize you just called me honey? She pointed out. I apologize if that was too forward, but it felt natural, I replied. She looked at me tenderly and said, I am, just wasn't sure if you knew. She wrapped her arms around my neck and drew me into a warm embrace. I felt a rush of excitement, our closeness igniting a spark within me. Our playful banter continued, and I found myself captivated by her charm. Abruptly, she stepped back. I think I'd like to see your bedroom next, she suggested. Eagerly, I guided her to my room. There, the mood shifted as we both became more aware of each other. She helped me out of my shirt with a grace that left me in awe, considering my own state of exhilaration. As I stood there, a moment of humor arose when I realized I still had my shoes on, leading to a brief, awkward interlude as we both laughed and I took them off. She stood close to me, our connection growing stronger, and the air was filled with anticipation. Oh, this is a surprise, she commented, a playful note in her voice. She looked up at me with a mix of warmth and affection, suggesting we take our time to enjoy the moment fully. In the heat of the moment, we escalated. Please, I've been waiting so long, she urged, her desire palpable. My hand ventured beneath the delicate fabric of her underwear, discovering the natural beauty of her body. Her response was immediate, a symphony of pleasure that enveloped us both. Now that's taken care of, I said, echoing her earlier words. We can really savor the next moment. She smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. I gently lowered her underwear, revealing her in all her natural allure. I can change it, if you prefer, she offered tentatively. No, it's perfect just as it is, I assured her. Gently parting her, my exploration began anew, my tongue and fingers working in harmony. She clung to me, her pleasure peaking once again under my attentive care. Wow, that was incredible. Keep going. I really like your taste, she said with a mischievous grin. It's no surprise you're having a great time. Now, I'm looking forward to being even closer to you, but let's take it slow, it's been a while. As we got more comfortable with each other, I found that moving closer to Taylor was surprisingly easy, though we had to adjust a bit as we went. Sorry about this, my past experiences were a bit different, she mentioned softly. Just go at your own pace, we'll get there. No need to apologize, it's a nice feeling, I reassured her. Gradually, we found our rhythm, sharing a deep connection, face to face, reminiscent of past times. Taylor's embrace was passionate, sometimes leaving gentle marks of affection when our movements synced perfectly. As our closeness intensified, I was mindful to discuss precautions with her. Don't worry, I've taken care of that, she assured me, referring to birth control. Feeling reassured, we continued our intimate moment, fully immersed in each other's presence. Afterward, we lay together contentedly, enjoying the closeness and warmth of our embrace. Soon after, Taylor and I decided to get married. It was a modest ceremony at the city hall, just the two of us, exchanging our vows with sincerity and commitment. We had both experienced grand weddings before, but this time, we opted for something simple and personal. Our honeymoon was a delightful contrast to my previous experiences. While I had delayed my honeymoon with my ex due to financial constraints, Taylor and I chose a cruise to Jamaica, an entirely new adventure. We spent our days exploring and capturing memories, and our nights were filled with joy and laughter. Our neighbors on the cruise seemed to take note of our happiness, some with raised eyebrows, but most with smiles. As time went on, Taylor expressed her desire to have children. I already had a daughter, Natalie, and while I wasn't initially eager for more kids, I loved being a dad and was open to the idea for Taylor. We hadn't actively started planning for a family, but Taylor playfully reminded me of this, always keeping our future in mind. I was lounging at home, taking a break after wrapping up yet another successful project. We had been married for about 6 months. Taylor was out, although she hadn't mentioned where she was going. I heard the familiar sound of her car in the garage and felt the usual excitement of her return. However, my joy quickly turned to confusion when she burst through the door connecting the garage and the living room. "You're unbelievable," she exclaimed. I wasn't prepared for this and instantly felt defensive. "What's wrong, darling?" I asked. "I can't believe what you've done," she retorted. I was utterly puzzled, wondering what this could be about. There hadn't been any recent issues with Taylor's trust, but perhaps she had misunderstood something. I began to back away, slightly apprehensive she might be too upset. "Honey, what are you referring to?" I inquired. "As if you don't know. You're responsible for it, and it was deliberate." "Don't act innocent," she accused. "Sweetheart, I'm not pretending. I genuinely don't understand what you're upset about." "Oh, playing dumb now. I don't know what I did, dear, so I won't confess. Just be truthful, dame, and you'll figure it out." Her words were making me increasingly anxious. I couldn't fathom what I might have done or what she thought I had done. Finally, I stopped retreating and faced her. "Please, can you explain what's happening?" I pleaded. She softly tapped me on the chest, then looked into my eyes with an expression of deep hurt. I was completely drawn in. "You've done it, you scoundrel," she said. Then her expression transformed into the most radiant, breathtaking smile I'd ever seen. It took a moment for her words to sink in, as I was bracing for an accusation. "Wait, are you saying you're pregnant?" 2 months along. "I've just been to the doctor," she beamed. Update: Taylor and I had just marked our first anniversary, and she was in her 8th month of pregnancy, radiating beauty and grace. Despite her growing belly, our bond remained strong, and we cherished each other's company daily. It was a comforting routine that seemed to bring her peace and rest. Life felt blissful. One evening, after dinner, as we were about to watch a movie, my phone interrupted us. It was Natalie calling. "Hey Nat, what's happening?" I asked. "Dad, can you come to Northtown Medical Center immediately?" There was an urgency in her voice that made me instantly concerned. "What's wrong, Natalie? Are you all right?" At that moment, I noticed Taylor tensing up beside me. "I'm okay, Dad. It's Mom. She's been in a car accident. It's serious." I felt a mixture of relief and annoyance. Why was she involving me in this? "Listen, I'm glad you're reconnecting with your mom, but she's John's responsibility now, not mine." There was a pause, and then she said softly, "Dad, John passed away. He was in the accident too." I blurted out a response without thinking and regretted it later. "Really? Well, that still doesn't change things for your mother." "Just a moment, Natalie." I briefly filled Taylor in on the situation. She just nodded and retreated to the bedroom. "All right, Natalie, go on." "I know Mom's not your concern, Dad. It's mine. They're asking me so many questions, making me fill out forms, and I'm lost. Savannah's struggling too, with her dad's passing. We both need some guidance." In this rewording, I've maintained the narrative's tone while removing explicit content and focusing more on the emotional aspects of the relationships and the situation at hand. "Okay, dear, I'll get there as soon as possible. Just don't expect me to chat with her or even visit her room." "Sure, Dad." I ended the call just as Taylor emerged from the bedroom, all ready to leave. "Wait a minute, gorgeous. Where are you off to?" "We're going to the hospital for Natalie, aren't we?" "I'll be going. You need to stay here. It's not safe for you in your condition to be in a place full of germs." "But honey, I want to support you and Nat." "I appreciate that, darling, but it's better if you stay here. It's not going to be pleasant there, and I don't want you to catch anything." "I'll keep you updated, all right." She looked disappointed but agreed. "Fine, but you have to tell me everything as if I were right there with you." When I arrived at the hospital, I made my way to Gina's floor. At the nurse's desk, they directed me to the waiting area where Natalie was. She greeted me warmly and filled me in. "Mom's going to pull through, but she'll need physical therapy. She broke her arm and leg, but luckily, the rest are minor injuries." "Do we have any idea how this happened?" "A police officer is with her right now. He'll let me know more once he's done talking to her." Soon after, the officer came out of Gina's room. "Ms. Weston, I appreciate your patience. Your mother was fortunate. She won't be facing any charges as she was only a passenger." "I'm sorry, charges for what? And who might you be?" "I'm her daughter, and I'm assisting her with making arrangements for my former wife." The initial toxicology results suggested that both Mr. and Mrs. Hartman were impaired, though the exact levels are yet to be confirmed. Since Mrs. Hartman was not driving, she won't face any legal consequences, and with Mr. Hartman's passing, there's no action to be taken against him. However, there might be a civil case from the owner of the other vehicle involved. I needed to understand the situation better. Officer, just to be clear, John and Gina were under the influence, and they caused an accident, correct? That's correct, sir. And the people in the other vehicle, how are they? Thankfully, no one lost their life. There are some injuries like concussions and fractures, and their vehicle is beyond repair. The outcome might depend on the Hartman's insurance coverage. Got it. Thanks for the information, officer. I'll go check on Mom, Natalie said, heading towards her mother's hospital room. Left alone, I sent a quick message to Taylor about the situation and started reflecting. I couldn't help thinking that if she had stayed with me, none of this would have happened since I don't drink. Yet, I felt a tinge of sympathy for her. Despite how things ended between us, she had lost her husband and now faced a future alone, without the men she loved. I wondered if she would seek another companion or choose a solitary life surrounded by friends and family, preparing for potential grandmotherhood. She would need to work, something she hadn't done much except briefly after college and before our marriage. It's likely she'd have to sell the house, which I imagined would be a constant reminder of her past. My thoughts were interrupted when Natalie came back. She wants to see you, Dad. I said I'd ask, but told her not to get her hopes up. It was odd. I had harbored anger towards her for so long, but suddenly, it vanished. What was I still angry about? I had a wonderful daughter, a fulfilling job, a loving wife, and a new child on the way. What happened with Gina was in the past, and perhaps she was facing the consequences now. The pain was real, but ultimately, things had worked out for the better. In that moment, I decided to let go of the past and move forward. I'll go talk to her. Natalie's reaction to my words was clearly one of surprise, but it quickly shifted into a warm smile. I sensed she realized I had reached a turning point in my thoughts. Entering Gina's room, I was greeted by her faint smile, dimmed by her frailty and the medications she was on. Dame, you're here. Thank you for coming. How are you feeling, Gina? Physically, I think I'll manage. Emotionally, it's tough, though it's hard to tell under all these meds. You've heard about John, haven't you? Yes, I have. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you really? Well, I wasn't initially, but I've recently come to understand that harboring resentment was changing me in ways I didn't like. So yes, I am sorry for your loss, and I want you to know that Taylor and I are here for you. That's kind of you. I've been looking forward to meeting your wonderful wife. Natalie mentioned she's expecting your new baby soon. You must be thrilled. I am, incredibly so. Dame, I need to apologize for my actions. I had this idealized image of marriage with John, but it turned out to be quite ordinary. I realized too late that I had what I wanted with you. I guess I always knew you wouldn't share me, and that gave me a pretext to blame you for my decision. It was a foolish mistake, and I owe you an apology. Gina, it's all in the past now. We're good. Friends. Absolutely. With John gone, I need to make some major life changes, like selling the house and finding a job. I feel a bit lost, honestly. Just focus on your recovery for now. When you're ready, reach out to me. I'll help you find a job. That means a lot, Dame. Thank you. After our conversation, I felt the urge to return to Taylor as quickly as possible. Gina's affairs were all settled, so it was just a matter of her recuperation. As I left her room, I saw Savannah had joined Natalie. Approaching them, I shared a warm hug with Savannah. How are you coping, Savvy? I'm managing, Uncle Dame. Dealing with the paperwork is a bit overwhelming, but I'm all right otherwise. I'm here to assist you. Let's tackle it together. The documentation required at the morgue was unlike anything required for a living patient. It was my first time handling such tasks for someone who had passed, but Uncle Dame and I figured it out as we conversed. I'm aware you hadn't been in touch with your father recently. I hope that wasn't because of me. No, it was out of respect for my mom. I believe she would have hoped for Dad to move on, but her family and friends, including you, meant the world to her. She wouldn't have approved of what Dad did, disrupting your life with Aunt Gina. He dishonored her memory, and that's something I couldn't overlook. Gina was also a willing participant in that situation, but that's in the past now. Remember, Savvy, I'm always here for you if you need anything. Actually, now that you bring it up, I'm in need of a new family, having recently lost my parents. Would you and Aunt Taylor consider stepping into those roles? Dear, we'd be delighted. In fact, you're coming home with me and Nat tonight. It feels right that we all stay together. And so we did. After wrapping up at the hospital, we regrouped at the house. As I escorted Savannah inside, I playfully announced to my expecting wife, "It's a girl." My comment, when the wife first mentioned sharing, he should have stood his ground and declared his love for his wife and told her absolutely no way that's ever going to happen. If I even get a hint of something like that happening, it's going to be bad news.